please join me in welcoming Jane and Jimmy as they present 100 years of serving the community.
Thanks, Matt. Jimmy and I are pleased to share the history of the Mills Community House and the Benzonia Township Library. But first, we have to back up a few years, about 165. And it goes like that, you know. In 1858, a group of Congregationalists came from Oberlin, Ohio, to establish a religious community and college open to all in the wilderness of northern Michigan. It was known as the 3 C's: church, college, and community. It wasn't very successful, however, since there were so few people here and there was no way to get here. So by 1900, they had given up on the college idea, and instead it became a private high school, the Benzonia Academy. We learn by doing was their motto. There were several buildings. Barber Hall, which stood where the tennis courts are now, was used for classrooms, library, laboratory, and a chapel. Bailey College, the home of the founder of the Benzonia colony, was the boys' dormitory after the Bailey family had moved to Beulah following the lowering of Crystal Lake in 1873. It was on the corner of Michigan and Traverse Avenues. East Hall was the girls' dormitory. It was near the corner of Orchard Street and Traverse Avenue over here. And the academy principal and his family also lived there. He was George Catton with his wife Adele and their 3 sons, Robert, Bruce, and Thurber, who was known as Tubby, and little sister Barbara. Things were going along. Oops, didn't get the picture of the family here. Okay, here we go. Things were going along pretty well, considering the public high school was 2 blocks away, until the night of January 17th, 1909, when East Hall burned to the ground. All the people were fine, but the building and contents were a total loss. Immediate plans began to rebuild. The building committee was headed by the Reverend Harlow Mills, who was minister at the Congregational Church, now the museum. Mr. Mills was very well liked and very persuasive, and $10,000 was raised quite quickly, including a donation from a well-known lumberman whose gift stipulated that the building be made of bricks. A location was chosen on Michigan Avenue, just north of Barber Hall. Construction was completed in record time, and on October 6th, 1909, the building was dedicated and named the Mills Cottage.
Now, before we get too far into these sketches that we have, it's imperative to mention, to credit a couple of unsung heroes of this project. Following the publication of Waiting for the Morning Train, there was a big uptick in interested individuals coming to the library and asking about the layout of the original building and the day-to-day goings-on when it was still the dormitory. So in the mid-70s, a library committee was tasked to seek out the missing bits and pieces by contacting alumni and now the very adult Catton children, all former residents. Alberta Bell and Jesse Hopkins Reed, Academy alumni, answered the call. The 2 former students compiled stories and recollections of the building and staff. In '78, Miss Bell submitted her history project, complete with these floor plans. Jesse Hopkins Reed, who left the Academy for U of M to become an architect, was very disappointed that there were no remaining blueprints and plans. So she began the task of coming up to the Mills over 2 summers, fending off illness, to carefully measure the building to make official drawings with all the changes over the years. Unfortunately, Miss Hopkins Reed passed away before this completion, but we are very lucky to have these preliminary sketches that the two came up with.
It was designed with 4 floors, including the lower level, which was kitchen, dining room for all students and faculty, sitting room, and housing for the janitor, who was usually a student. Double doors separated the sitting room to the north from the dining room. The Cattons had a family table and hosted all meals. It is said that Mr. Catton was noted for his witty remarks. Entrance was from under the downstairs porch, as it still is today, or an outside entry on the south side of the main floor.
Obviously, this picture is not from 1909, but it's one of the few pictures that we have that show this entrance, this ramp going down to this entrance door, which was actually the main used entrance. It's also great because it shows here there would be the entrance to what became the stairs on the back side of the building, which at the time, the two sides had stairways. It was the only access to the upper levels.
The second main floor was living facilities for the principal and his family. To the left of the door was a social room, now the Michigan room, with a fireplace and comfortable chairs. To the right was the door. To the right of the door was Mr. Catton's office, now the children's room. One boy who had bent the rules was heard to remark years later,
The distance from the front door to Mr. Catton's office was the longest 15 feet on campus if you were carrying a guilty conscience.
sound familiar? Behind the principal's office in the southwest corner was the office and living room of the Dean of Women, Miss Bertha Ellis, who was also a teacher at the academy. Her bedroom and bathroom were across the hall, where the current librarian has her office. The north and east sides of the building were 3 bedrooms, a bath, and living room with a corner fireplace for the principal and his family. And then there were 2 porches across the back of the building. A central stairway led to the upper levels. A grandfather clock was donated by the class of 1912 and sat on the landing between the second and third floors. Pictured here are members of that class: Roy Tower, Jessie Hopkins Reed, Ruth Harger Faust, Pauline Munson Claggett, and the Reverend Robert Catton. The class of 1909, of course, when the building was brand new, donated this rocking chair, which is on exhibit at the museum. The 3rd and 4th floors were rooms for female students. Each room had a window and closet. Yes, there was a 4th floor. More about that later. Bathrooms on the 3rd floor served both the 3rd and the 4th floors. The building was designed for 30 students. These wonderful photographs are from scrapbooks compiled by Pauline Munson, class of 1912, and Jean Anderson, class of 1914. I think they're just horsing around.
I'd like to mention the building had always had indoor plumbing since it was built, but not electricity. Power is run to the mills from the Homestead Dam in 1913. So we're right in between these two girls' class. The cost of the power lines ran, the wiring inside the building, and the first years of electricity cost $360. Miss Bell's history tells of what she called a carbide tank, a large galvanized tube that was sunk into the ground behind the building. She said when water was poured into the tube, a gas was formed that traveled through tiny little piping to provide gas lighting through the building. We know this as a calcium carbide system that creates acetylene. And if you notice in this photo, above the doorway, you can see that little gas lamp that was there, and that was lighting for the building until 1913.
The Academy always had money problems. And with the United States entry into World War I, it was decided to close until the end of the war, but it never did reopen. The class of 1918, with 10 graduates, was the last. Turn the page. The third C was dissolved, and the trustees deeded all the property to the Benzonia Congregational Church with the definite stipulation that the property be used for public good. It was considered as a site for a hospital, but deemed impractical. One such use was a girls' camp for 4 summers, 1921 through 24. Camp Osaha of the Dunes used the dormitory facilities until land was purchased on Crystal Lake. With new owners in 1938, the camp's name changed to Camp Crystal Air. A decision was made to sell Barber Hall and the furnishings of the Mills Cottage to pay for renovations of the building, including eliminating the 4th floor to make a gymnasium and auditorium for high school basketball teams. Now's the time to talk about high school hoops. Neither the college, the academy, or Benzonia High School Hilltoppers had a basketball court. So until 1924, they played on the upper floor of Case Hall on the corner of Michigan and Traverse Avenue, next to the museum. This was a community space for all kinds of activities, including a courtroom when Benzonia was the county seat. It was a potential fire hazard, and there was only one stairway. But there was one safety feature, however: smoking and the use of alcohol in Benzonia was prohibited by clause in the village charter and every private deed. After the top floor of Case Hall was deemed unsuitable, for 1 year, basketball was played at Terps Pavilion on Crystal Lake Beach in Beulah. It wasn't the best of facilities because the ceiling was too low and the ball would hit the beams. By 1925, the renovations were complete. The 4th floor was removed, and the Mills Community House was home court for Benzonia for 15 years. You can notice the lath right here on the wall is the same as right here. Girls basketball also. In 1940, a large addition was built on Benzonia High School, which included a very large gymnasium.
It's not hard to see why this auditorium use declined in 1940. The new high school gym was fabulous. And then after the high school moved to its new location with a real big gym and separate auditorium, the elementary school around the corner got a big gym, further cementing the fate of this auditorium.
Pickup basketball and volleyball were played here at the Mills through the 1970s. A stage was built right here with underneath storage for racks for folding chairs. And it's still the same racks from 1925. The high school in various auditoriums staged plays, talent nights, and concerts. While we were looking through museum archives, this particular playbill caught our eye.
This is by far my favorite, the dramatic trial. This is true community theater. Our judge here, Mr. Leonard Case, a bunch of wonderful people from the community, and this is my favorite. The jury is composed of well-known local people. Telephone your friends.
The Monday Study Club had a reenactment of the coronation of George VI.
And if you notice the imprints of the use of the floor here underneath the carpet, the free throw line, also this wonderful monogram, which we'd like to get remade. And right above, there's the drop-down basketball hoop.
Movies were also shown right from the beginning. This one's from 1926. Lots of other changes were made to the mills to convert it from a dormitory to a community house, starting with the lower level. Less changes were made there because it was and still is a kitchen dining room. The wall separating the waiting and the dining room was removed and the kitchen remodeled. In the early 1930s, 2 regulation shuffleboard courts and a ping pong table were added.
Also in the 1930s, it was noted that, in 28, it was noted that this was a complete vacant lot where the park is now. And by the mid-30s, the Mills Community House was actually responsible for not only tennis courts, basketball courts, track, baseball diamond, and everything else that was going on over there. So it was a pretty quick transformation of the parks as well.
On the main floor, the central stairway was removed and a single flight down was added to the north end of the hall. The physical remodeling of the main floor wasn't much. The individual rooms still remained the same. However, the purpose became the community public library. Up until this time, there was no public library in the entire township.
March 19th, 1925 was the first board member of the Mills Community House Committee. Other than some financial talk, the real first point of business was establishing a library committee. So from day one, the library and the Mills were one with separate leadership, separate budgets, a shared employee, but both ultimately under the umbrella of the church. Originally, in their pioneer spirit, the community funded the library solely on donations and volunteering. Eventually, the township chipped in a little, only a few dollars a year. By 41, after some involvement from the state of Michigan and the Library of Michigan, Benzonia Township found some more money, and the public funding increased from $75 a year to $300 a year. Lots of new books in 1941. In 44, the state granted a whopping $150 from its equalization fund, helping bridge the gap in areas with low assessed evaluation. More new books. In 1950, the library tried for state funding as a public library. They're denied because even though the Mills Community House Library boasted that they're a public library, open and completely free to the public, offering facilities and programs that exceeded most rural libraries, they were technically a private library. The community had done such a fine job of responsibly operating it, the library was not to receive regular state funds. So at the time, it was easier to continue with only local monies than to restructure the whole system. It wasn't until 1967 that the library became an official public library, complete with a millage.
The first library board was William Sinclair, longtime teacher at Benzonia High School, and Miss Olson, also a teacher, and Mrs. Spellman. She was in direct charge of the library, buying books and magazines and setting the library hours. Etta Whiteman was hired as a hostess in the library, hostess at the library and the community house. I think many of you will remember Joe Johnson's friendly face when you walked into the library to check out books. Over the past 100 years, the Mills Community House has been used for many, many activities. In 1972, it received recognition from both the state and the National Historical Society and was awarded state and national historical status. The Centennial White Pine, whoops, I went ahead too fast here. The Centennial White Pine was planted in 1958 at the community's centennial. In the fall of 1925, just 6 months after opening, there were tons of references in the newspaper of events happening at the Mills. It was obvious the community space was really needed. The October 25 meeting of the Ladies' Aid Society was held at the Mills, and the building had only been open about a week. They each paid their $1 dues. They enjoyed a supper in the dining room. Quote, after supper, the guests were invited to the parlors on the second floor. The occasion was the formal presentation by a host of friends to the community house, a framed portrait of Mr. Mills. Mr. Ira Fales, the current minister, spoke of the privilege of the community during the year that Mr. Mills had been so united with the community house and the Upon seeing his portrait, Mr. Mills promptly countered by asking, "Who's that old man hanging up there?" That fall, the Monday Study Club hosted a speaker from the State Department of Health, and they had a big meeting here in the club rooms. I think the original board would be very pleased that the building has become such a real community center. Lots and lots of organizations have met here over the years. Washington Day banquets, sponsored by the high school class, and father and son and mother and daughter banquets, sponsored by the Beulah Business Associations. School dances and proms were held in this room. Here's Rhoda Case's dance card from 1926.
That's what we call a full dance card. Now, we know that there wasn't any long-term romance, but if we notice number one, Mr. DJ Nugent, he was dancing all night long. I'd also like to point out that it was nothing for these banquets, these large dances, and these community events to have 200, 400 people in this room sharing the space, even banquets in the basement. It's phenomenal how close people would like to be then.
Here's the J-Hop with the Classens Orchestra and the senior prom. And for some reason, this band had their picture taken. This is Benzonia Band in front of the building. In the late 1970s, Crystal Lake Nursery, led by Joe Johnson, began here in the lower level of the building.
I have a couple of these photographs, these graduation photographs myself, but unfortunately one of them has faces all scribbled out on it, so I didn't want to show it in case anybody here were my classmates in attendance. But the scribbling of the faces may have been an indication to the reason why it took me 2 years of preschool to earn this diploma. I would just like to give another shout out to Miss Johnson. Most people around my age have a very special place in their heart for her, along with Miss Carol Crawford, who was her helper at the preschool. A lot of people went to preschool there and have very fond memories. One quick thing I'd like to share about it. My most fond memory about preschool in this building is that there was a table down on the north end of the room that had hammers, nails, saws, drills, scraps of wood, and we were allowed to play there unsupervised. A little thing like that, there's a lot of social implications there, and a lot of fond memories from a lot of people.
The church's Pilgrim Fellowship program for youth met here in the 60s and 70s on Sunday evenings. The Benzie County Draft Board rented the room that had been Robert Catton's bedroom.
The Mills Board minutes, they show the income from the Selective Service Office for many years, but there's really little recorded about it. I tracked down a first-hand account. Honor resident Mike Ryan turned 18 in 1967. He came to the Mills to register after his birthday. He had an education deferment that expired in 69, and it wasn't long after that he and 10 peers got their letters, and they arranged to all report to the Mills, all 11 of them, at once. Much like that, the Academy student solemnly walking to Principal Catton's office, Mike said it was a very long walk down that short hall through the library to the draft office. At the time, Jean Love, a local woman, ran the Benzonia draft office. And these 11 boys knew her because they are acquaintances of her son who was already serving in Vietnam. Those 11 boys deployed for training altogether, and it's reported as the largest group of soldiers to deploy from Benzie County at one time.
In 1973, after the draft board left, it was declared as the Robert Catton Memorial Reading Room. After Robert graduated from the academy, he attended Oberlin College and served in the Navy in both World War I as a dirigible pilot and World War II as an instructor and chaplain. He devoted his life to Christian ministry. He continued to hold a deep and abiding interest in Benzonia, and his family retired here. Other organizations over the years rented space. The Village Council and elections were held at the Mills. Chamber of Commerce rented a space. County extension groups, garden clubs, Audubon, Weight Watchers, and in the 1980s, 2 different food co-ops. 4-H, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, County Teachers Institute, and Farmer Institutes. There were several Academy reunions. The Benzonia Congregational Church didn't have a lot of space downstairs, and so most of their church suppers and events and meetings were held here. The Benzonia Post Office for many years paid rent to the Mills, and it may have been for storage space behind the kitchen. In 1944, women came from Jamaica and Detroit as part of the Women's Land Army to help on the farms with so many men overseas. They stayed and ate at the Mills. During the war, weekly newsreels were also shown upstairs. Piano lessons were given downstairs until 1953, when the board said no more because the people upstairs complained it was too loud. People remember the annual rummage sale sponsored by the Congregational Women's Fellowship.
During the long period of time when this upper story was not in use due to, well, we'll get more about that. A lot of people over and over recall coming up here, whether they were escorted, invited, or sneaking, to find this big, spacious, dark room completely filled with dusty, sheet-covered ghosts or household things that the residents of Benzonia stored up here for the annual rummage sale. It was noted that the people of Benzonia must have the cleanest attics because it was all in here. Point of interest, that rummage sale was started in the 30s by the church to help migrant workers in the area.
In 1964, one of the women's circles from the church started the annual Strawberry Social as a benefit for the library, which continued for many years, sponsored by the Friends of the Library. Sometime after the 70s, the upper floor fell into disrepair and the bats moved in. And it wasn't safe to use, but not forgotten. Benzie County Players was looking for a home, and people imagined lots of other uses. Old buildings need attention, and attention means money. Over the years, the church held community Sundays, where the collection plate money was donated to the mills, and the congregation held their fellowship here. Fortunately, the mills also received a very generous contribution from longtime board member Cecily Williams in the early 1990s. This enabled the building to get a new roof, major renovations to the kitchen and lower level, and to build an elevator to provide access for all. Hooray. Yeah, it's a good thing. The building was still a wing of the church, and it made it very difficult to get grant money. A committee of community stakeholders led by Susan Case Lutz was established, and in June 2002, a ceremony took place transferring the deed from the church to the Mills House Board of Directors.
Up here on the upper right, this is the original board. I'm not going to read them all off, but if you can see them, you'll see this is a hand-picked board of people from all sorts of different areas of interest: music, theater, law. I mean, it was a well put together board. And I'd just like to give another shout out regarding Susan Case Lutz. There are far too many people to name who have contributed so much to the Mills, but Susan was truly the architect of the Modern Mills Community House Association. Her countless hours of research and work and fundraising left us with a framework for the future. And with the help of some of her Benzonia friends, many who had left the area, Susan established the endowment fund that helps keep the lights on today.
The third floor was renovated and reopened in 2008. But to use the restroom, and we all know about this, you had to go down to the lower level. That enormous problem was solved in 2021 when the 100 Women Who Care of Benzie County awarded a grant that funded the restrooms on this floor.
Yeah, the 100 Women Who Care, they chose us as the recipients of their gift for the meeting. We had been hosting them in this room. One lucky night, we were the recipients of their gifts, and by the time they came back for their next meeting, the bathrooms were done, and they were privileged to have the first flushes.
And so we move forward. In 2015, the library was renovated, including removing the stylish paneling. Nope, I skipped something here. The library has grown to take over the entire main floor. And the children's room is so wonderful with its Glenn Wolfe beautiful mural painted on the wall. The programs offered at the library really need a spreadsheet to keep abreast of what's going on. From Story Hour with Ann Clark to ice skate loans, to oral histories of local veterans and community hours, community leaders. Our library is so much more than just checking out books. Amanda and her staff won a prestigious award, the State Librarians Award, in 2016.
The award was given for superior customer service, growing programs, and strong community partnerships. This award is not given by class or size of the library or the community they serve. So our little library was and still is beating out huge library systems in terms of service and inspiration. In 2020, the library received a substantial grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, and this enabled the launch of Remembering Benzie, an oral history project. A team of student interns were hired, trained in interviewing skills and recording tech by professional to capture video oral histories in our area. There were several required interviews per student, including a veteran interview that collaborated with the Library of Congress's Veterans Oral History Project. This program operated for 2 years with 2 separate teams of interns, and their videos and tons of amazing videos can be found on the library's YouTube page. So please check out the YouTube page and check out both organizations' websites. They're both jam-packed with great things.
And we'd like to ask Amanda to come and join us and tell us a little bit about the future of the library.
I am very nervous about this. I don't know what to say. What I would like to say is this. I am so proud of everything that we have done in the library. I am so proud of the community that helps support us. My staff, I truly have the most amazing staff. And any of you that have ever come into the library, you're well aware of that. As far as the future goes, I'm going to deal with it in the same way that we did in the past, and we will take everything that comes at us and make it great. So that's kind of the plan. But I would like to also thank you guys for putting this presentation together, and to the community and to all the people that came before us, because the fact that this still exists 100 years later and continues to grow and hold such a special place in so many of our hearts is a real testament to this community, and this house is built on all of your love and appreciation. So I'm grateful to all of you, and as far as the future of the library,
Thank you.
In 2023, the Smithsonian came to Benzonia. I hope you were all caught that. The library and the Mills collaborated to bring an amazing traveling Smithsonian exhibit promoting the power of community. It really was amazing, but most people found most amazing and were most impressed with the peripheral exhibits that showcase the individual organization that make our community great. And there's some great stuff on the YouTube channel with that too, so dig in.
So in this room, a newly revitalized Benzie County Players has found a home and a champion in Kristen Fleetwood. Kristen was hired as the director of the Mills House, and she has started the Benzonia Area Emergency Fund. So, Kristen, would you come and tell us what your vision for the future of the Mills is?
Hi, I'm Kristen Fleetwood. I'm the executive director of the Mills. The emergency fund is a really neat project. It got started with the help of the Empire Emergency Fund, and we've got 2 concerts coming up in November, and then this one here will be in December up here. But the vision for the Mills moving forward really is just connecting to the original vision, which is a place of community and a place of learning. And we're doing that by having everybody else is bringing their things in here, like the Historical Society. We have other area nonprofits that are able to do their outreach here. And then fun things, they mentioned the Benzie County Players. We've got the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe coming up later this month. Just arts and learning and community connection. It's been really fun meeting everybody. It is a community hub, and I've enjoyed being here.
Thank you.
And of course, the Benzie Area Historical Society is so appreciative of being able to hold our monthly lecture series in such a cool building. So there at one time was this sign out in front of the mills, and it says, Community House, a place for rest, reading, recreation, fellowship. You are welcome. Happy 100th birthday to the Mills Community House and to the Benzonia Township Library. And Jimmy, you had some. So we will do some question, if people have questions, and then following that, we have a very special video for people to see. In fact, I think Amanda and Jimmy and I are the only ones that have even seen it so far. So so anybody have any questions? And while Matt's walking around with the microphone, I'd like to thank a couple people. Andy Bolander, I couldn't do this without you on your research. And oh man, Sherry, thanks for getting everything all scanned.
If you do have any questions, please wait until you get the microphone before you start asking. So show of hands. Any questions? Whoa.
I was wondering what the raised area is just south of the parking lot there. Is that an old building foundation or something?
I can't say for certain, but behind this building, between here and Barber, there was they call it the power plant, which was a big boiler that fed both buildings. Could have been part of that. There were other things going on this side of the building that no one really has a perfectly clear vision of. At one time, there was a very large root cellar. You know, it was up above, you know, the roof was above the ground. The porches, the stairways, they change so often, sometimes with very little mention, and no photographs. Nobody took pictures of the back of that building. So to answer your question, I'm not quite sure, but the power plant may have been a part of that. We also would accept corrections and input. There's some gray areas here. You know, there's times that we had to dig really deep just to find some of these bits. So we know there's people in the community who have better answers than all the things we have. Yes.
Well, my question is the beautiful ceramic tiles in the ladies' bathroom. When did that come to pass?
That was a complete oversight by me. I meant to mention that when we talked about the building of the bathrooms. Frankfurt artist, her name is Trish Early. She made those tiles specifically for us, and they are exclusively for us. They're not, she didn't make any more. She made the molds herself by taking pressings of flowers from our own pollinator garden. So the images on the tiles are actually our own flowers that made the molds out of. Yeah. I'd also like to mention really quick some of the things on the grounds, the grounds of this building are so beautiful, and a lot of that beauty, came before us, and hopefully it'll, be around much after us. The centennial tree mentioned, planted in '58 with the town's centennial still there. There's also on the opposite side, which would be right cut off by this picture, there's a spruce tree that was donated, I believe, in '39 by the Monday Study Group. Right where this picture was taken, there was originally a clump of birch trees that were planted by the boys of the class of '09. And I'm sure you all know, especially in the springtime, how incredible the pollinating gardens that frame the grounds. And I don't see him, but I'd like to give a shout out to Steve Stevens for his work on that, and the master gardeners who just maintain beautiful gardens. There's actually a couple more special trees. part of the Smithsonian program that we had, we invited some local people to come and help us celebrate. And Archangel Tree Archive was one of our partners there, and they donated a couple sequoias that are on our property, one in the front lawn over here and one back here in the bowl. There's also some champion lilacs that were given to us by Archangel too, that are along that back ridge. We'll wait for them to grow.
That in pictures of the building in the 30s, 40s, and there's an incredible amount of hanging greenery coming off of the second floor, as well as a lot of shrubbery around the first floor, almost hiding the building. Yeah, there. How? What happened to all that?
It's we've had to keep the main bushes there trimmed down just so that, the porch didn't, people didn't move into the porch. But as far as all the ivy goes, personally I love it, but not the healthiest thing for a brick building. So it's gone. All right.
All
If there's
right.
no more questions, we'll start the video.
Any questions on Zoom? Okay, well, let me wrap up and then we can do the video and we can go from there. Thank you, Jimmy and Jane. Can we give these guys another round of applause, please? Our next lecture is going to be on Thursday, December 11th, as Ingemar and Lisa Johansson present Christmas in Sweden, a musical lecture. Benzie Area Historical Museum will be hosting the Habitat for Humanity's of Benzie County's 2025 Festival of Trees, Friday,